Who would you put your money on at the moment?
Well, I'm not very good at reading the political tea leaves, if I'm honest, because my money was on Ben Wallace. I thought he would have been a great pair of safe hands, certainly in the interim period, as they were looking for the next Prime Minister. Because let's not forget, Boris Johnson is still currently the Prime Minister, but not the leader of the Conservative Party. I was reading an article from Nigel Farage yesterday in the Telegraph, and he's quite right, actually. Boris has literally squandered an 80-seat majority simply because the party have moved away from being a Conservative party. A low-tax government, less state, and we've seen the cost of living crisis, all under snaky Sunak, may I say, the man who literally has, I believe, stabbed Boris Johnson in the back in this leadership race as well. So I think, it's not up for us, and you mentioned earlier this morning in the show, it's not up for us to decide. Ultimately, it'll be the parliamentary party first, then it'll go to the members, of course. And many of the members within the Conservative Party, I believe 1/3, are calling for Boris Johnson to run again as the leader of the Conservative Party. So there's a lot of turmoil going on, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of deals being done behind the scenes, I should imagine, to gain the support from people such as Ben Wallace.
Interesting, though, isn't it? You could make the argument, and pretty solidly, that the Prime Minister hasn't squandered his 80-seat majority because he's not been Conservative enough. He's squandered it because of sort of private mistakes, morally questionable actions, and nothing to do with policy.
Well, you're right to a certain extent, Stephen, but, which Prime Minister has ever been free from scandal? You look back through the great Prime Ministers we've had in this country, and I would say that a lot of this has happened under his watch, not all his responsibility. The behaviour of some of the members of his party, for example, are not down to him personally. But of course, when you're the leader of a party and you have this culture that's been brewing for some years, then of course you have to take the hit. I take the point also that I don't believe Boris has been a Conservative. We have the highest taxing government in the last, how many decades? We've seen inflation go through the roof. I know it's a global issue. You've mentioned that on the show this morning, Stephen. But I think there are huge issues. For example, the cost of living crisis. And if the next Prime Minister really wants to win the electorate over at the next general election, they've got to deal with things that matter to the people, and that is the cost of fuel at the pump, the cost of food, the cost of wages, in line with inflation. All of these things have to be dealt with by the next Prime Minister. If all they're going to talk about is giving cuts to big corporation tax to big companies, it's not going to cut the mustard with the public. And I'm afraid, the biggest concern that I have as a Brexiteer, and I just want to put that out there, is that we end up losing the next general election to someone who is a Remainer, or even potentially the Labour Party in bed with SNP, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, and that will be a disaster for many of us who believed in getting Brexit done. Keir Starmer's already come out saying he wants to make Brexit work, trying to win back those red wall voters who lent their vote to Boris Johnson in 2019. And I have to say, I was a huge supporter of Boris Johnson in 2019 on getting Brexit done and many other issues as well. But he has changed so much. Yes, he was an election winner, but now I believe he's become an electoral liability. And that's the problem the Conservative Party have got. And they've got to find someone now to win them the next general election.